I live alone in a building that feels too quiet after midnight. Not horror movie quiet, just the kind that makes you notice things you never paid attention to before. The fridge clicking on, pipes sighing in the walls, the elevator stopping on floors nobody seems to live on. Last Tuesday, while lying on the couch with my phone in my hand, I heard something that didn't fit with the rest of the noise. A knock. Soft, almost polite. It didn't come from my door. It came from inside the wall behind my sofa. At first, I ignored it. Old buildings make weird sounds. That's what everyone says. But a few minutes later, it came again, clearer this time, like someone touching the wall from the other side, just to see if I was there. I stood up, walked closer, and placed my ear against the paint. I could hear my own breathing echo back at me, but nothing else. Then, when I pulled away, it happened again. 3 slow knocks, spaced out, careful, like whoever was doing it didn't want to wake anyone up. That was the moment I realized I was smiling from nerves, the way people do when they're pretending not to be scared. That night I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined fingers pressing through the wall, finding the weak spots in the drywall. The knocks returned at 2:18 a.m., exactly 1 minute later than the first time. The next night they came again at 2:19, then 2:20, always 1 minute later, like whatever was on the other side was learning my routine, adjusting itself to me. I tried staying up later, sitting in the kitchen with the lights on, pretending I was busy. Still, the knocks came, patient, steady, never loud enough to justify calling anyone. I told myself it had to be a neighbor, someone bored, someone drunk. But when I asked the guy across the hall if he ever heard anything strange at night, he just laughed and said the walls were solid concrete between apartments. No hollow spaces. No way for sound to travel like that. When I told him it was coming from inside my wall, his smile faded in a way that made my stomach tighten. By the fourth night, I decided to record it. I pressed my phone against the wall and waited, feeling stupid the entire time. At 2:21 the knock came again, clearer than ever, and my screen vibrated softly as the microphone caught the sound. When I played it back, my heart started racing for a different reason. There was more than knocking. Between each tap, there was a faint scrape, like something dragging slowly across the inside of the wall, feeling its way forward. I didn't sleep after that. I just sat on the floor with my back against the opposite wall, counting the seconds until morning like it was a deadline I had to survive. The building manager finally agreed to look after I showed him the recording. He brought a maintenance guy who drilled a small hole into the wall. Dust poured out onto my floor. He pushed a tiny camera inside and frowned at the screen. There wasn't another apartment behind my living room. There wasn't even insulation. Just empty darkness, stretching further back than the wall should allow. A gap between structures that wasn't on any blueprint. The maintenance guy muttered that it was impossible, but he kept the camera inside longer than necessary, like he was hoping it would find a normal answer. That night the knocking didn't come. I almost convinced myself it was over. Then I heard breathing. Soft, controlled, coming from the same place the knocking used to be. Not through the wall. From it. Like someone had their mouth pressed right against the drywall, breathing through tiny cracks I couldn't see. I didn't move. I didn't even blink. I was afraid it could hear that too. In the morning, I found dust on the floor under the hole they had drilled, arranged in a strange curved line. It looked like the beginning of a letter. I covered it with a towel, packed a bag, and left for work early. That night, I stayed at a hotel across town. At 2:24 a.m., my phone vibrated. It wasn't a call. It was a voice memo sent from my own number. When I played it, all I could hear was the sound of my apartment, the fridge clicking, the pipes sighing, and then 3 slow knocks. I went back the next day because I couldn't stand not knowing. The hole in the wall was gone, perfectly patched, painted over so cleanly it was like it never existed. But when I put my hand on that spot, I felt warmth behind it, living warmth. At 2:25 a.m. the knock came again. Not 3 times. Once. From inside the room. I didn't move after the knock. I just stood in the middle of the room, listening to my own heartbeat. Then my phone vibrated in my hand. A notification from the recorder app. I hadn't started it. I didn't even have it open. Still, there was a new file. The title wasn't a timestamp. It was my name. I almost dropped the phone when I pressed play. At first, it was just silence. Then the familiar sounds of my apartment filled the speaker, but they were wrong. The fridge clicked a little slower than usual. The pipes sighed longer. And underneath it all, faint but unmistakable, I could hear my own breathing. Not the breathing I was making in that moment, but a recording of it from nights I was asleep, unaware, lying on the couch with the wall right behind my head. At the end of the audio, something else appeared. A voice. Not quite mine, not quite anyone else's either. It tried to say my name, stretching the syllables, like it was tasting them for the first time. That was when I realized the knocking had never been a warning. It was practice. I went downstairs to talk to the guy across the hall again, the one who said the walls were solid concrete. His door was open, his TV still on. The apartment was empty, furniture gone, photos stripped from the walls, like he had moved out in the middle of a sentence. The building manager later told me he hadn't seen him in weeks. That couldn't be true. I had spoken to him 3 days ago. When I returned to my place, there was dust on the floor again, even though I hadn't touched the wall. This time the curved line was longer. It looked like it was trying to form a word. That night the knock came early, at 1:53. I didn't wait for it. I pushed my ear against the wall and whispered, asking who was there, my voice shaking even though I tried to keep it steady. For a moment nothing happened. Then I felt pressure. Not on the wall, but through it, like a weight leaning in from the other side. The drywall bulged slightly under my palm. I pulled away, stumbling backward, and heard something shift behind it, like a foot finding balance. I set my phone up to record video before I went to sleep. When I checked it in the morning, there were hours of nothing, just me breathing in the dark. Then, at exactly 2:26 a.m., the image changed. The camera didn't move, but the wall did. The patched area darkened, as if it were becoming transparent. Something long and pale slid across the surface from the inside, leaving a faint outline, the suggestion of fingers feeling for a door that wasn't there. I called the police. They came, looked at the wall, watched the video, and said it was probably a prank or a reflection issue with the camera. When they left, I didn't feel safer. I felt like I had just announced to the thing in my wall that nobody was coming to save me. At 2:27, the knocking stopped completely. Instead, I heard a sound from my bedroom. The slow creak of floorboards adjusting to weight. The wall wasn't the place it lived anymore. It had learned the rest of the apartment. I didn't open my eyes when I heard it in the bedroom. I knew if I did, whatever was there would become real. The mattress dipped. Not enough to feel like a person sitting. Just enough to feel like something testing gravity for the first time. I held my breath until my lungs burned. The sound it made wasn't breathing. It was copying. A delayed version of my own inhale. My own exhale. Half a second too late. I counted the seconds in my head. If I stayed still long enough, maybe it would think I was gone. Then my phone vibrated on the nightstand. A new audio file, named Bedroom. I listened to it later in the bathroom with the door locked. The recording didn't start with silence. It started with movement, fabric sliding, the quiet drag of skin on sheets. Then a whisper, not words, just breath shaped into the idea of a voice. After that came a sentence. My sentence. A phrase I always used when I was half asleep, when I rolled over and thought I was alone. Just a minute. I threw the phone into the sink. It kept playing. In the morning, the patch in the living room was gone. Not repaired. Gone. No crack. No dust. Just a smooth stretch of wall like it had never been opened. I pressed my palm to it anyway. It was warm. Not room temperature. Body temperature. And from the other side, something pressed back. I don't sleep in the apartment anymore. I don't even pack. I sit in my car at night watching the building through the windshield. Every night at 2:26, the light in my bedroom turns on. I never leave it on. This morning I checked my phone. There was one last file. No title. No time. Just my voice saying something I don't remember ever thinking. You can stay now.